Dan Rankin.
I grew up in Samoa. I bake with my dog, Fraser.
When did you first sort of have an interest in food and in cooking?
From a young age, I remember cooking my first meal when I was probably 11 or 12. Then I bought my first cookbook. It was a Gordon Ramsay. My mates would come over and I'd make them this Scotch fillet, wrapped in bacon. I used to work in hospitality while I was studying at uni. And, when I told the chef, he was like, "Oh, don't do it, man. You just end up cutting onions for hours." I was like, "Oh." And that kind of made me not want to be a chef. Lockdown came around. And I was like, I want to teach my members how to make healthy meals, make them laugh as well. So I was like, Fraser, my dog. Everyone loves Fraser. I'll just chuck him in my videos.
Kiwi men even struggle to be able to say it with their chest. Their chest out and say, "Yeah, I'm proud of myself."
But I think it's really important, man, to not puff yourself up. It's just as important not to shrink yourself.
You mentioned Mancancook. I want to talk about the difference between Dan and Mancancook. Do you struggle with navigating both worlds? Kia ora everyone, Zach and Jake here from The Martin Show. Just a friendly reminder to please subscribe to our channel. It helps the channel more than you know, and it gives us more opportunity to be able to bring great guests. We appreciate all the love we have received in 2024. 2025 is going to be a massive year. Enjoy all the episodes coming up, whānau. Much aroha. To the moon. Dan Rankin, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, man.
Now, a.k.a. Mancancook. Dan, what do we need to know about you to know a little bit more about who you are?
I'm Dan. I bake with my dog, Fraser, my pug. He's my best mate. Grew up in the islands. I grew up in Samoa, and I guess that's a good base understanding, and I'm sure we'll dive into more of it in the conversation.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Well, that was actually a surprise for me. I didn't know you were Samoan for one, and I didn't know you grew up there and you moved to New Zealand when you were 16.
Yeah, I did.
How would you describe life in Samoa, your earlier years?
Oh, it's awesome, man. We lived on a compound, so my three cousins' families will just live right next to us after school. We, get our bikes out, run around the fields, play in the jungle, stuff like that. But I really enjoyed it. It's really instilled a lot of great values in me growing up there, like family and humility and discipline and stuff like that. You learn a lot of that growing up in the islands.
Were you surrounded by a supportive whānau in those earlier years?
Yep, I was. My dad wasn't around so much and my mom wasn't around, so my grandma, but I had heaps of aunties and uncles and cousins and stuff there that, were quite supportive growing up.
Bro, how important to you is your culture?
It's really important. It's basically the base of who I am, right? But it's also important in a way that it's instilled a lot of, I guess, trauma growing up that I've had to address in a way. So it's got its good and bad.
And you can still speak Samoan?
Yeah, I can speak Samoan fluently.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How was the transition from Samoa coming over to New Zealand?
It was tough, man. I firstly moved over when I was probably about maybe 14. And then I just got real bad homesickness and, kind of begged my family to take me back to Samoa. So I went back to Samoa for another 2 years. And then it was kind of time to come back. So I came back to New Zealand when I was about 16 and experienced a lot of homesickness and just felt quite isolated. I remember my first day at school in New Zealand. I went to Mancancook Grammar for a couple of years before going to uni. And the first day at school, first class, this student said something to the teacher and the teacher started crying. And, I was just sitting back. I was like, oh, yeah, this kid's going to get a hiding. I was just waiting, just waiting for this kid to get a hiding. And nothing happened. And I think that moment I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a different place now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is different.
Yeah, bro. And how long did it take you to adjust to, I guess, a more westernized world or New Zealand culture?
Probably, to be honest, man, I don't think I really adjusted until I finished high school and went to uni. I just felt like I had a lot more freedom at uni to kind of do what I wanted, whereas high school you're quite restricted, and in Samoa you're restricted as well, but I just felt restricted in different ways over here.
Yeah, do you think you took some of that I guess you expected this guy to get a hiding, right? Do you think you took some of their, I guess maybe toughness or, I don't know what you would want to call it, but I guess, a tougher lifestyle. Do you think you took that over with you as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it probably wasn't tough. It was more of discipline and respect that you learn from growing up in Samoa.
Yeah.
And I definitely took a lot of that, when I moved to New Zealand, going to school and playing sports and stuff. You learn to be disciplined and to show up, and yeah.
Welcome to the Martin Show First Ad Break. For anyone who is wanting to go on a new journey, learn a new skill, we have started our basic beginners boxing fundamentals course. For anyone, if it's your first time, if you're a seasoned member, this is the course for you in the boxing space or fitness space. Click the link below or go to onlineboxingtraining.com and I'll see you guys there. Let's get some mahi, eh? Did you have any role models in those earlier years as well, people that you looked up to?
I guess subconsciously, right? Like you have these role models. They're your role models, like, your older brothers and your older cousins and your parents and stuff. But for me, like, I love them. But, as you grow older, you think like, oh man, like they actually weren't the best role models, man. Like, my parents separated and like my uncles separated and my cousins and all, like a lot of males in my family. And, I've witnessed a lot of relationships growing up that now when I look back on, I'm like, man, that's actually not a good way to, treat your wife or treat your partner and stuff like that. So those, and now I kind of see them as role models. Like I've learned a lot from them in that regard. But growing up, you see them, okay, that must be normal in a relationship. And then you grow up and, with those kind of perceptions and ways of dealing in relationships as you grow up. So a long answer to your question.
Yeah, bro.
But when I moved to New Zealand, my dean really put his head up for me, man. Like I wasn't getting in trouble at school. Like I just wasn't going to school a lot of the time just because, I felt like I moved to New Zealand and I was pretty much living on my own. So it was kind of up to me to get up and go to school and make myself breakfast and, come back home and make myself dinner and stuff like that. So I had a lot of independency as a, 16-year-old. So, if I didn't feel like going to school in the morning, I probably wouldn't. And then the dean kind of saw that my attendance was dropping a lot and then did some research into my situation. And, he found out that I was living on my own and, my dad was working overseas and kind of just, brought me in, had a chat with me and, stuck his head up where I probably would have got expelled at school just for not turning up a lot of the time.
Yeah, needing those hard conversations, some of those truth seekers.
Yeah.
They're important. Yeah. Nah, I love that, bro. It reminds me of when you were talking about some of the relationships you saw or the individuals that you saw that potentially weren't good role models for you.
Yeah.
It's like that notion of, what do I not want to be? Like that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like there's the role models that we want to be like, but then there's also individuals that are probably put in our life so we don't want to be like them as well. You know what I mean? Even if it is parents, siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. But lives. I mean, you don't know that as a kid. What you see is like, oh, okay, that must be the standard. A lot of the time, unless you're quite a self-aware child, and I was more observant than self-aware as a kid, just looking around what's going on. But moved over to New Zealand and I got into CrossFit, and I had a coach. His name was Pat Barber. And I really looked up to him. He just was a great dude and, had great values and really instilled, showing up and, getting stuff done and being a good person and empathy and all of that. Yeah.
I love this. There's a saying, and it's like a lot of people say they're like, no one comes to save you. Nobody's coming to save you. But one of the coaches in Bali, he said, but there's actually been people in our lives that have kind of saved us and we may not even be aware of it.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think about my boxing coach.
Yeah.
Like no one's coming to save you, but man, that man's saved me in lots of ways.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that life will kind of throw at you whatever you need, right, for the evolution of your consciousness. And that's how life throws that type of stuff at you, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard you say before and some of the social media clips about you've done the inner work. When did that journey sort of start?
Probably 2020, 2021 maybe.
COVID times.
Yeah, I used to own a gym, CrossFit gym in Epsom. I still train there actually and coach a couple classes. But my ex-partner and I owned it, and then we split. And it was just such a difficult situation, right? Because, we owned this business that we had to show up and be the best version of ourselves. But then inside, you're like, you're breaking down. And that's when I was like, okay, man, I got to do some work here. And my brother recommended therapy. So that's when I started going to therapy and just, picking up a few books and started reading more. And
Would you recommend that for individuals listening if they're in a similar boat where they're trying to show up as the best individuals or best versions of themselves and still feel, I guess, something missing inside? Do you feel like that helped you?
it definitely helped me. I wouldn't know. That depends on the situation, and I'm not qualified to kind of give that kind of advice. But yeah, definitely for me, when I was in a difficult situation, it helped immensely, for sure. And even now, when I'm, still going through chaos or crisis in life, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to try and, I guess, address or resolve this issue,
Yeah.
And book in a session with a therapist, or just time to myself and really think and be present.
Who are the individuals you look up to now, bro?
Yeah, good question, man. My older brothers, for sure. I've got 2 older brothers, Mikey and Patrick. I look up to them quite a lot.
What is it about them, though, specifically, that inspires you?
They've been through pretty much the same stuff I've been through, but they've had more time to experience it. They've gone through parents' divorce, same parents, but they've had more time with my parents, and they've had the same amount of time as they've separated. So they've known, my parents for a bit longer than I have, and they've gone to be able to process the childhood trauma that we all had growing up and stuff like that. And how they've built themselves. My older brother's got 3 kids, and he's an awesome father, and awesome husband. So I always look at him as a role model for relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And then my middle brother's very stoic, and kind of just speaks his mind a lot of the time. And yeah, it's definitely helped me a lot throughout my, I guess, journey.
Bro, where are you at? You mentioned stoic. Where are you at in your beliefs of stoicism, or that the hard man, callousing your mind mentality,
Yeah.
the Andrew Tate sort of David Goggins spectrum, and then I guess the feeling your feelings go. Where are you at in navigating that balance?
I think if you're looking at Stoicism as a philosophy, it's a little different than, not expressing your emotions. I think a lot of people misinterpret that through Stoicism as a philosophy. Like, Stoicism is focusing on the controllables and what you can control, and I guess, labeling your feelings and emotions, and showing up and being consistent type thing. And on the other side, but I do see how it can come across as being this ideal way of being masculine, right? Because a lot of the authors on Stoicism are males. And that's what I kind of had a contradictory with when I got into it. I read a lot of books on Stoicism, but all the authors, and even the examples they'd use of, Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or, Epictetus, all of them are all males, and rarely you see examples of female or woman that described as being stoic, right? So when I got into that, I was like, oh man, and I said this on Stanley's podcast, I need different perspective. I need to understand a woman's perspective, mainly because I was aware of that when I was getting to Stoicism, but I never had a woman's perspective of growing up. Like, my mom wasn't around much. My grandma raised us, but she was a classic, Samoan grandma that, puts a roof over your head, food on your plate, but wasn't emotionally available. So that's where that awareness came. Like, okay, let's see what other books are out there.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can resonate with that a lot, but on
Yeah.
the opposite spectrum.
Oh,
I've been surrounded by a lot of feminine energy.
Yeah.
With just my mother and all her sisters and cousins.
Yeah.
But I've felt like I've always lacked the masculine essence.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm on a similar journey, but
Yeah.
on the other end.
Yeah. Nice, man.
Bro, how would you describe what it is that you do
What I
Like,
do?
do you call yourself a creator, a chef, a baker?
When people ask me what I do, and they haven't, seen my content or anything, I just say I'm a chef,
Yeah.
or a baker, or a chef, But I mainly focus on desserts and pastries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I describe myself.
When did you first sort of have an interest in food and in cooking?
From a young age, I remember cooking my first meal when I was probably like, 11 or 12, some ham and eggs back in Samoa. And then my friends would come over on the weekends or after school in Samoa, and I'd make them like ilingi, which is like sardines in a can. Wow. You fry that up with like tomatoes and watercress and just serve it on rice, and it was delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from a young age, yeah.
Self-taught, or did you learn?
Yeah, self-taught, man.
Yeah.
Especially, when I moved to New Zealand and I was living on my own, right? Like, I had to learn how to cook. I didn't want to eat cereal. Like, I started eating cereal and Nutella on toast for like weeks, and I was like, man, I need to eat something else.
Yeah.
So I watched the cooking channel. I used to skip school, man, and like watch the cooking channel, bro, and go to the gym, But then I bought my first cookbook. It was a Gordon Ramsay cookbook. Yeah, it was probably a bit too
flash.
Yeah, too flash for me at the time, but I enjoyed it, man. Like my mates would come over and I'd make them this like Scotch fillet with wrapped in bacon and like had the herbs and stuff in the middle, and then there'd be like chop suey on the side and like soup or corned beef on the side and stuff like
balance
that.
It out.
Balance it out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Man, did you ever think like you could pursue this as a career?
Nah, never. I mean, I remember wanting to be a chef at one point when I was younger, and I used to work in hospitality while I was studying at uni. And, when I told the chef, he was like, oh, don't do it, man. You just end up cutting onions for hours. I was like, oh. And that kind of made me not want to be a chef.
Yeah.
So I think, it can be quite effective about when people kind of guide you in a way. Like, you have to be quite aware, like, okay, that's just his perspective on being a chef. It could be different. Someone else could have a different perspective, but I let that perspective gauge on, my career as a chef. But maybe it was a good thing, I'm here now.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Was there a certain moment that changed it all where you were like, no, I'm gonna do this?
Nah, not really. I started filming content in 2014. I used to partner on a gym in the city, and I've just always wanted, to cook. So my mate, I had no idea how to use a camera or anything like that, and my mate was a photographer and videographer, and he was like, oh, bro, I'll film it. So we just set up this, makeshift kitchen in the gym in the city. And I think I made a paella, which is like a Spanish dish. Okay. My first ever, recipe. And yeah, there was a lot more dialogue involved and stuff there. And it was really hard to be consistent because I was working full time. And I imagine like to film a podcast, you have to set out a lot of time. The same goes for, 8 to 10 minute cooking video, Yeah. So it was really, really inconsistent of that. And then when I owned the gym that I used to own, lockdown came around. I was like, oh, I want to teach my members how to make healthy meals. And it was such a weird time, like everyone didn't know what was going on, and there was a lot of uncertainty there, and mixed emotions. And I was like, oh, cool. How can I teach them to make something healthy, but make them laugh as well? So I was like, oh, Fraser, my dog. Everyone loves Fraser. I'll just chuck him in my videos. And that's pretty much how it happened.
Yeah, 2014. See, I think that's another, it might surprise a lot of people because it's not overnight. You've been doing this, creating content, that's, what's that, 11 years?
Yeah, but 2014, I probably filmed 3 videos, and I probably didn't film another cooking video. I'd always chuck stuff in my stories, like recipes and stuff, but I'd never post it throughout the years. And then around like 2019, 2020, then I started getting back into it, mainly because I learned how to use a camera. So when I started this gym in Epsom called Propolis Fitness, I decided that, I want to create content for it. And so I went out and bought a, A7 III and just learned how to use that, watched heaps of YouTube videos and tutorials and stuff, and then started creating content for the gym. And I was like, oh, cool, I know how to use a camera now. I can film my own cooking. Yeah. Was
there a moment, like a viral moment, or a moment that just changed everything for you and you just got all this traction? Or has it been sort of like a slow burner?
Like I had this concept of, I wanted to shorten my videos 45 seconds to 55 seconds, whereas in the past, there's a lot more dialogue in there. So I wanted to make them short, and I came up with this concept, and I was like, oh, could work. But at the same time, my main reason for creating content was like I enjoyed baking, I enjoyed cooking, I enjoyed hanging out with my dog, and I enjoyed creating content. So there was no point where I was like, oh, I want to do this to, grow or get a following or anything like that. A lot of it was intrinsic motivation. But after like the first 3 videos, you could see it started to pick up quite a bit.
So fame was never or numbers wasn't really the goal in those earlier stages?
Nah, never. I've always loved cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about now? Do the numbers concern you now?
I mean, at times they do, but, I like to think that I'm self-aware enough to not let the ego kind of take over and just, go for what it is. Like I still create content because I still enjoy cooking and I still enjoy hanging out with Fraser. And he loves it. He loves creating content together.
From like a strategy point of view, to anyone sort of starting, what was the strategy that you were using in those initial stages in comparison to now? Was it just like a trial and error, see what works?
I guess the strategy back then would probably just to film, to do the action of creating. And then throughout that, you learn more and you learn what works and you learn what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to not overanalyze the concept if you have a concept or what you want to do, because you can often get stuck into this paralysis, right, of thinking too much, and you're in that space of thinking and doing, and you're in that middle space and you just keep thinking, or you have this idea and you're like, how can I make it better? How can I make it better? But it doesn't need to be perfect. Just, just start creating and keep creating and you figure stuff out along the way.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Consistency is king, eh?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Consistency, man.
Well, the mission, it used to be helping men learn how to cook.
Yeah.
Why men specifically?
When I came up with the name Mancancook, it was like back in 2014. And from my perspective back then, like the males in my life didn't know how to cook. And from what I saw, like a lot of the chefs were female. But that perspective has changed a lot throughout the years. I think, a lot of the men I know are amazing cooks, and a lot of the top chefs, are men as well. So that perspective's changed a lot. Whereas now I kind of just see it as, just a singular, a man can cook, man can cook.
What would you say the mission is now?
Probably would be just to, make people laugh and teach them a recipe. That's probably the mission now. Yeah.
Teach them a recipe.
Yeah. Teach them a recipe while making them laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. And entertainment, eh?
Yeah.
You mentioned man can cook. I want to talk about the difference between Dan and man can cook, because I feel like a lot of people will be very shocked when they hear, you think the way that you think, you speak the way that you do as Dan in comparison. Do you struggle with navigating both worlds?
Nah, not necessarily. Like, I don't think like man can cook is an act. Like there's a part of me that, when I'm not filming, I'm like that as well. But I think most of the time I'm like this, I'm just Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. And I've heard you mention that you don't really you've come to a point in your life where you don't care what anyone really thinks anymore as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care. I think in a way that's an advantage. Like people underestimate me. Like, they're like, oh, he's just this silly guy. But I feel like there's a lot more going on there. Yeah.
But I feel like people still struggle with it a lot, with that idea of
what other people think of you.
What sort of helped you, or what advice would you say to whether they're creators or not about the care factor of other people on you?
I think for me anyway, it's really important that I don't care what other people think. And I've had to develop that throughout my work, right? Because if you have this perspective of other people's opinions controlling you, you end up very limited in your work and your creativity, because you're like, oh, I don't want to do this because this person might think this. So you end up shrinking yourself in a way. Whereas if you just open up your mind and be like, okay, I'm just going to approach this concept and, not think about what anyone is going to think about me, you end up with a broader perspective of ideas and you're able to brainstorm a lot more and you end up being so much more creative.
Have you always felt like you've possessed that?
Nah, never, man. Like I always used to worry about what I'd post on social media and what other people would think. But a lot of it's just, the ego, right? It's so worried about other people's perspectives. But I had to develop it along the way. Even my first video, if you go back and watch my first video in that style that I do now, I probably, went on for weeks, man. Like, should I post this? Should I not? It's like, it's really silly, it's really dumb. And then I'm just like, stuff it. I'm going to post it. Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned that a strength of yours is your vulnerability.
Yeah.
What, I guess, vulnerability relates to confidence, et cetera, et cetera. What does vulnerability look like for you now?
I mean, for me, it's being authentic and being able to express yourself. In short, yeah, that's what it means to me.
Why do you think it's a strength of yours?
I guess this goes back to not really caring about what other people think, right? Like if you're vulnerable, there's this, you can't worry about what other people think. If you want to express your feelings and emotions, you have to be able to express it in a way that you're not going to be affected by their response, right? You're just expressing it rather than worrying about, okay, if I say it this way, what's the response going to be? Obviously, you have to express it in a way that's kind and empathetic, and you do your best not to express in a way that's going to encourage defensiveness from the other person, but then you have no control of what the other person's response is going to be anyway.
Why do you think most men struggle with that, though? Now, especially in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think
vulnerability, the act of expression, as you say.
I find that a lot of men in general are very suppressive, and when you suppress emotions, right, they resurface in different ways, and that can be, drugs, alcohol, whatever. And I think it comes from this, ideology of masculinity, being that, men shouldn't share their feelings or shouldn't express emotions, or it's weakness, like we shouldn't share this stuff because it makes us look weak. But, I think it's very important to be able to express that. And I think it provides a lot of value to your relationships as well.
Do you think we're on the right path as men here in New Zealand? I know you mentioned in Stanley's pod, he's like, no, I don't see it coming anytime soon. I think 2 decades away from that becoming sort of normalized. Do you think we're on the right path to that?
I don't know, man. I don't know the statistics or anything like that on what's going on. But, I do know that if conversations like this don't happen, it's never going to happen.
What scares you now, bro? What do you feel like is your biggest fear now?
Biggest fear would be losing Fraser. I think about it probably daily. But also, it is going to happen one day. And that's probably my biggest fear. Yeah.
That's beautiful, actually. Yeah. Best friend.
Best friend, yeah.
Yo, for you, bro, biggest work-ons for you going forward?
I mean, to be honest, man, just keep doing what I'm doing. To be honest, biggest work-on for me has been my relationship, I guess romantic relationship. I've had a few relationships that haven't gone so great, and then a lot of that has led to, I guess, me working on myself. And I think because of that, you're almost scared to go back into another relationship because of what happened. And I've been working on that a lot, realizing that, that's okay, and like you are enough and you are worthy of love and belonging. So I've definitely been working on that a lot.
I think a lot of young fellas will be able to resonate with that a lot. And do you think that feeling has been because you've been hurt in the past, you don't want to get hurt again?
Yeah, I guess right now it is, for sure. But, at the same time, I think of it like those challenges in the past I've experienced the greatest growth from it. So I wouldn't change it any other way. And how I see challenges now, I'm just like, okay, cool. Like this challenge is going to help me grow regardless. Yeah,
bro, no, that's an important one, I think.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Martin Show First Ad Break. For anyone who is wanting to go on a new journey, learn a new skill, we have started our basic beginners boxing fundamentals course. For anyone, if it's your first time, if you're a seasoned member, this is the course for you in the boxing space or fitness space. Click the link below or go to onlineboxingtraining.com and I'll see you guys there. Let's get some mahi, eh? Some fire-off questions. What's the best advice you've ever received?
probably that, you know, the only constant is change. I think it's a big one. My dad would always tell me and my brothers as a kid, like the only thing that stays the same is change, and you have to really learn how to adapt and be more aware of it.
Is there anything specifically in your life that you're like, I need a change, or I'm wanting a change here? Would it be that relationship idea that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I guess so, man. But I've been working on it. I mean, like, it's not like I've just put it in the back end. Yeah, that would be it. And I guess being a bit more comfortable with, you know, leaving Fraser for a little bit. Like, I'm going away for about a month, and I'm a little bit nervous. Like, oh man, I'm not going to be around Fraser for a bit. But understanding, like, my dad's coming from Samoa to look after him, and he'll be sweet. So,
what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh man, I don't know. Feelings make you weak. You know, that type of advice that, you know, you hear a lot. I guess the stigma of, you know, male masculinity.
Dan, who do you know that we should know?
Oh, I'd say, I mean, I don't know her, but she's had a lot of impact on, I guess, me as a person, and it would be Brene Brown. You know, that she's an author, female author. I don't know if you guys know her, but yeah, man, pick up some of her books.
Is there anything that off the top of your head was like your greatest lesson from her?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a book she wrote, Gifts of Imperfection. When I read that, that's really, a lot of it really resonated with me. And I go back and read it every now and then just to remind myself, but, you know, it's okay being imperfect. Like, you know, even as a content creator, I find it's really important to actually not be perfect. Often when we're so worried about perfection, we fail to actually release work into the world because we're like, oh man, it's not perfect. I'll just keep working on it more. And you end up not releasing anything.
Yeah, bro, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I think most people would be able to suffer or relate to that.
Yeah, I think so.
5-10 years, where do you want to see yourself? Future Dan?
Oh man, I don't really think that far ahead.
Yeah? No, that's good,
Yeah,
bro. Do you think you're more of a in time and now person?
I mean, I try my best to be present.
Yeah, wow.
As much as I can. You know, I try not to anticipate the future or, you know, identify with the past. Just, you know, try and be present here with you having this conversation. But, you know, if I am to think about 5 to 10 years in the future, I really want to move to Queenstown. You know, growing up in the islands most of my life, like, you know, beaches are cool, but, you know, there's something different about the snow and the mountains that, you know, really attract me. And yeah, you know, still be creating content, but hopefully with my top on a bit more. And you know, yeah, with Fraser. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sure you'll get some great content ideas down there, bro. You know what I mean? Use that snow to your advantage. Dan, I know you just mentioned the past, but I do want to go to the past quickly and maybe go to that 16-year-old Dan.
Yeah.
That's just about to embark on his new life here in New Zealand. If you could go back, what's the one thing you want to tell younger Dan?
Man, I tell him, don't be afraid to be yourself. You know, like, there's a lot of suppressed emotions there as a kid growing up. And you know, don't be afraid to be yourself and express yourself.
Yeah, bro. I always find it so fascinating talking to people that you know have done like just so much mahi behind closed doors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not everyone sort of possesses that characteristic. So I can feel it from you. I can see it in all your work as well.
Oh, thanks, man.
No, I appreciate it, bro. We do have a closing tradition on this podcast where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they are. So the question for you today, Dan, is, are you proud of the life you are living?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely proud of it, man. Obviously, I'm still working on things and will continue working on things, but I'm proud of where I am at the moment, for sure.
Yeah, and that's another one, bro, that I feel like a lot of New Zealanders, particularly Kiwi men, even struggle to be able to say it with their chest, you know, their chest out and say, yeah, I'm proud of myself. Yeah,
it's hard. Even in like Samoan culture, man, growing up, you learn to be humble and you learn a lot of humility growing up. Like, and especially when I moved to New Zealand and I went to like job interviews and stuff like that, and you had to like talk yourself up at these job interviews, and I just felt so uncomfortable, you know. But I think it's really important, man, to, you know, not puff yourself up. But I think it's just as important not to. I think it's just as important not to shrink yourself.
Yeah.
It's important not to puff yourself up, and it's really important not to shrink yourself. and you have to just kind of like stand on this sacred ground and just be yourself.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, eh? At the end of the day, being yourself. I struggle with that as well, bro. Navigating. You mentioned the ego.
Yeah.
And it's like that space between knowing, that you're good enough to do this thing and also still having that humility at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a struggle I'm currently dealing with.
The struggle
that I'm currently dealing with.
Yeah.
Like, just what is it? What is it? Because sometimes I'm like, oh shit, no, bring yourself back down.
Yeah.
And then other times you're like,
that's good, man. Like sounds like you're very self-aware of it. And I think that's the place to be. Yeah.
It's all work, bro. What's coming up, man? Where can the people find you and stuff?
Yeah, man. Social media. I'm on Instagram, Mancancook NZ, TikTok, the same, Threads, YouTube, Facebook.
Yo.
Yeah, all of their recipes are online if you want a recipe.
Yo, whereabouts? You said you're going away for a month?
Yeah, I'm actually off to Melbourne next week for some work for a brand there. Probably can't just say now, but I come back for a few days and I'm off to Ireland for a food festival, Ballymaloo Food Festival. Yeah, it's so random, man. They approached me and they asked me to come over, and yeah, I'm excited, man. I'll be doing some like live cooking, some like Q&As and stuff like that. And then I'm off to London. I've got a sister in London, and then a few collabs lined up there. And then I'm off to like Portugal to run a 3-day baking workshop, which is, exciting. Yeah,
bro. Have you ever done anything like this? It sounds like you're on the move. You done stuff like this before? Like travel here, do mahi here, next place here?
A little bit, but not as much, not in like one big chunk like I'm doing now. It just so happened that I was able to line everything up, with this trip to Ireland, to London and Portugal, just all came together. But yeah, I've been away a bit for work and stuff like that. Yeah.
Man, well, it sounds like, the university's giving you your flowers, bro. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Dan Rankin, bro.
Yeah.
Mancancook, let's go.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All day. That concludes another episode, team, of The Martin Show. We'll leave Mancancook's details below. We'll leave _ The Martin Show somewhere around here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're going to be back next week for another episode. Mō ora, kia ora. Thank you.